First, I'm going to apologize for my tardiness. I was actually doing victim notification where we had indicators of compromise for a company, and I had to go and deal with that, which actually kind of leads right into our discussion, though, because this is something that's happening every day. So first, I'm going to say that I am not an actor, but they play me on TV. So what that's meant to say is that cyber is now such a big role in what we do that they no longer ignore us, even when they're making sitcoms or TV dramas. You have to have the IT person or the cyber person, and they're a critical part of the show. That's how we drive investigations. That's how we do law enforcement. That's part of every hospital drama now. You have the IT person. It's mainstream. Being a geek is now cool, so to speak, you know. And so I'm here to actually just walk through. I have a lot of slides here. I'm going to skip through most of them because that's not what we're here to talk about is this presentation. But I wanted to use this to kind of illustrate the point of what kind of things that we're responding to, what instance we're looking at to help drive the questions for the panel here. So everybody knows what ransomware is, right? Everybody knows that they're using ransomware now as extortionware, that they're not only, as I talked about a little bit today, you know, with Colonial Pipeline, they stole data from them. So imagine that you're a police department. This is one that I had a couple weeks ago, and they called us up and they said, hey, we've just been hit, and they stole all of our body cam footage from all of our open investigations. They're threatening to release it online, as well as they hit us with ransomware. So we don't have access to see what's on that body cam footage because they encrypted it, but they're going to release it online. Another police department shortly after that called us with the exact same thing, except for this time they were told that they had all the information for where all their judges lived and all their undercover police officers, and they were going to release that information public. Does that change the way that you look at paying a ransom versus not paying a ransom, or do you consider that information already compromised? Are people's lives in danger because of the information that might be released? We've seen it over and over again where organizations almost go bankrupt because of this. Matter of fact, I think we had our first college went out of business because of a ransomware attack. Now, there were other mitigating factors there as well. We had our first death in a hospital because of ransomware, because they couldn't give them care of service because all their systems were encrypted. So think about how dependent we are as we kind of look through a lot of this stuff. But I want to kind of show the reason for this presentation really is to talk about how Hollywood portrays us, how the public thinks about us, but what the reality really is. And the fantasy still is that hackers are only after large companies and the government, that they're romanticized about vast amounts of money or state secrets is what they're after. But honestly, you know, insider threat is still king. Everybody's cyber incident response that I deal with, they all jump right to, let's look at where the external threat is. Let's look at this from that avenue. And most of the time, you know, I was trained by the DoD and the intelligence community, and we were always taught every incident starts inside. We always treat it as an insider threat first to rule that out before we look at external parties. Because these days you have advertent and inadvertent insiders, people who actually want to do malicious things to you because they're disgruntled or whatever. But then you also have people who are doing it because they don't know better. They haven't taken their training seriously. They're the network cowboys that just want to get things done, or they're just being lazy. You know, that still happens. So we still have phishing, vishing, and social engineering. Is everybody familiar with what vishing is? I usually get this question a lot. So vishing is where I call you up. So I'm using your phone in order to make you do things to your computer, saying, hey, I'm Microsoft. I noticed that your computer has a flaw in it. Can I get you just to type in a few things for me or open a back door so I can get into your computer and fix it for you? So I'm actually using a phone call to get started with everything. So in this particular case study, this was actually a city in which one of their departments decided that they didn't want their fire department to come in and have to do time cards anymore. Their firefighters, when they're off duty, they just wanted them to be away and be able to log in and do their time cards. So they didn't tell IT, but they hooked up a time card server that was open to the public, and its password was very awesome in password 1234. So it was a matter of moments before hackers figured this out, compromised that system, used that system to then get in and map out the rest of the city's network and hit the city up for ransomware. So, I mean, all because one organization or one part of the organizations didn't tell IT, they didn't follow normal procurement processes, they put rogue IT on there, they didn't do anything to secure it, that caused this whole thing to happen. It happens that fast, and it's that easy. So our next fantasy is that hackers are always attacking from the computer. They think of it as a person is attacking them, when the reality is is that it's all botnets. It's all scripted attacks. It's software as a service. Somebody's writing this stuff and putting it out there so that people can use it. Anybody can be a hacker these days, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. So in this particular case study here, this is what we talk about. This is the supply chain. This is what we call island hopping. I used to do this when I did pen testing, is I would look for every company that did business with that organization, and I would say, okay, let me start at the smallest widget supplier, somebody who has no cybersecurity. I'm gonna get into that organization, and once again, I'm not looking to steal anything from them. I want their computers. I wanna use their computers to attack my next target. I'm gonna get in their computers, I'm gonna see that they have legitimate traffic that either goes to the company that I wanna hit, or I'm gonna use their invoicing system, and I'm gonna attach my malware to their invoices. So the invoice goes to company B. Is company B expecting that invoice? Yes. Are they gonna open it to try and pay it? Yes. Are they now infected? Also yes. And then I get into their computers and I do, wash, rinse, and repeat. I hit the next and I start branching out until I finally get where I'm going. This was actually a nuclear power plant that the threat actors were after. It was stopped before it got there. But the sad thing about this is that one of the larger companies in this island hopping chain saw that there was malware coming in on these invoices. So you know what they did? They cleaned it up and paid the invoice. They never contacted the company to tell them that they were sending them malware every month. And it just kept happening and kept happening. And they just kept saying, oh, it's just part of our job. We just clean it up, and then we pay the invoice and we move on. We stopped communicating somewhere along the way. We stopped thinking that we're all in this together. So the next fantasy is that once you stop a hacker, everything's back to normal. This is that part of the 30-minute episode or the hour episode where they stop the hacker, they all high five, and they all go home. Right? I wish that's how it worked, right? The average ransomware event, from an operational standpoint, it might be 2 weeks that people think, okay, we're back to steady state operations. But from an IT or security perspective, it's 9, 10, 11 months before you've gotten everything cleaned up. I mean, certain organizations out there, when you're talking about, okay, did we find patient zero? Did we find how they really got in? What do we need to do to fix this? Okay, we need to buy new hardware. We need to upgrade, move to multi-factor authentication. Some of the projects take years to get done, and that incident stays open until everything is done to clean it up. So that's the big thing, is that nobody really knows what the steady state operations even look like. How many of you have a network operations baseline? Which systems are supposed to talk to which systems at what time, over what protocols, over what ports? Yeah, nobody has that. How do you know what normal looks like? How do you know when an incident's even over? Your operators will say, well, it's when I can do my job again. But is the incident really over? Has everything been done? One of my favorite exercises, actually kind of what just happened when I was doing that victim notification, is what would you do if I called you and I said, hey, I'm doing an investigation of a company. I can't tell you who the company is, but as we were investigating this particular incident, I found all of your company's intellectual property and all your data on their systems. How did it get there? Now, you have no indicators of compromise. You have nothing internally saying that, hey, we have an incident, but I'm saying I have all your data. Did an insider put it there? Did somebody scan it and mail it to somebody? Did you have an actual breach and somebody stole all your data? How would you do an investigation where you have nothing other than somebody from the federal government telling you I have your data? Or what happened with the company I was just working with saying, hey, your data is for sale on the dark web and somebody just bought it. And we know a little bit about things. I can give you a username maybe, and that's all the information I have to go off of. How long, this data has been for sale for 3 weeks. Oh, your log files only go back 7 days? Whew, this is gonna be a tough one. Do your log files actually meet your operational environment? Do you know what normal looks like? So in this particular case, an organization was hit with ransomware, and they paid the ransom. They did not involve us in all of this. And this is what happens, is they got the encryption key and they started they thought that paying the ransom would give them the encryption key or the decryption key, and then they would be able to just get right back to operations. Have many of you ever used Google Translate? Put the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog into Google Translate, translate to any language, and then ask it to translate back. What are you gonna get back? Does it look the same? It's the same thing when you encrypt and then unencrypt data. All your pointers, all your stuff, everything, nothing comes back the way that it should. And how do you know that the bad guys didn't tamper with it before they encrypted it? Let's say that I'm a threat actor and I want to make sure that I get my thing. I might create an account, if you're a bank, I might create an account that says, hey, I have $1 million in that. Then I hit you with encryption. So you restore from backup or you unencrypt it. Well, my account with $1 million is still in there. How do you validate the integrity of the data? How do you know that everything is the way that it should be? And then the last thing is that it's easy to identify when you've been hacked. It's even harder when you're thinking, how do you know when your supply chain has been hacked? How do you know when whether the data you're sharing back and forth, that there's not a man in the middle going on, that somebody's not manipulating the data in some way, that everything is where it should be and how it should be? And that's the biggest thing. I love this particular example. This was a fun one for us, is that this organization called us up and we were trying to help them figure out patient zero. Their log files didn't go back far enough. Their backups weren't sufficient to get the job done. So we were trying to find patient zero to make sure that they didn't get hacked again. You know what we found? We found 2 help desk tickets. And the first help desk ticket is where a user called up and said, hey, my mouse is moving around its own and opening things up on my computer. And the help desk technician said, oh, because what's a help desk there for? To get the user back up and operational, right? Let's try rebooting your system. Guess what? It worked. The ticket was closed. A second user called up and said, hey, my mouse is moving around on its own. A second help desk technician said, hey, rebooting solved the first problem. Let's try that. And it worked. There was no further investigation done. There was no root cause analysis. This was never translated over to the cybersecurity team to say, we might have a problem. The help desk says, we did our job, we're good to go, everybody's back up and operational. They were hit with ransomware 24 hours later. And once again, their log files didn't go back far enough to find out how the person got in there originally, how long they'd been in there, and then they didn't know how to buy a Bitcoin. How many of you know how to buy a Bitcoin? How many of your company has a policy on how you would buy Bitcoin to pay a ransom? Once again, I'm from the federal government, please don't ever pay a ransom. But if you had a business decision to make, would you know how to do it? Most organizations don't. So that's the big thing, is that we're asking you to be prepared, harden your systems. If you take nothing else out of what I just said, exercise, 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 and then be proactive. Be proactive with your business chains. Get to know how they operate. What are their security programs? What are your security handoffs? How many of you use cloud services? How many of you have it written into your contract that you're allowed to do forensics on those cloud services if and when the need arises? Because I can't tell you the number of investigations where we've been hampered because we say, oh, we need forensics evidence, we need to get it off your cloud provider. And they say, yeah, you're not doing that. We'll do it for you. But guess what? If your cloud was the one that actually caused the breach to happen, you think they're going to tell you that? They think you're going to hand over evidence that shows that they were the problem? No, they're going to give you back what they want you to see, maybe not what you need to see. But I think that's a great place to start the discussion for the rest of us to answer all of your questions here. So thank you.